Yeah, I mean, my position is shut down the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Let's start with that. The NRC has been fundamentally hostile to nuclear energy in the United States of America.
To new nukes specifically.
To new nuclear power plants. And think about the result that yields. So before the Nuclear Regulatory Commission came into existence, the average time to build a new nuclear power plant in the United States was about 5 years. What is the average time in a place like Japan today? Around 4 to 5 years. France, a little slower, 5 to 8 years. Guess what it is in the United States now after the existence of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission? Does anybody take a guess what the average? 25 to 40 years. 25 to 40 years, which is a functional way of saying
for a decade.
which is basically a way of saying just for the environmental clearances, which is the first step of the process.
Wow.
So basically, they've said that, hey, we haven't banned the creation of nuclear energy in the United States because the American people wouldn't really vote for that if they're educated on it. But this reveals the dirty little secret of American politics. The people we elect to run the government are not the ones who actually run the government. It's the shadow government in the deep state. So the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, nuclear energy isn't banned in the United States, but they believe there should not be another nuclear power plant built in the U.S. So even though Congress hasn't banned it, they've just used bureaucratic power through the back door to say that we will make sure quietly through the shadow government that there's not a new nuclear power plant built in the United States. Now, why? Because of 3 Mile or Chernobyl or concerns about safety. Now let's double click on that. Gen 3 and Gen 4 nuclear reactors are, by any measure, safer, lower risk than Gen 2 nuclear reactors.
And much smaller.
And more efficient and productive. Because of this policy, we're not building the new, safer versions of nuclear reactors, so the only ones that are actually operative in the United States are Gen 2 or earlier. The only country in the world that has a Gen 4 nuclear reactor, I'll let you guys guess. Which one do you think it is?
Russia?
China. Yep, for civilian nuclear energy. So,
because they have no choice.
So in the name of protecting Americans, what are we doing is actually, who would have ever thought, increasing the risk of further harm. And by the way, the FDA does this to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the 3-letter agencies. That's why my objective in there is to get in there and shut them down. You know, I was thinking about it. I was having an interesting conversation with somebody in the last few days. How are you actually going to lay off 1 million federal employees? So anyway, to finish answering this question, shut down the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and follow the actual laws we have in this country, allow for the construction of Gen 3, Gen 4 nuclear reactors, and catch up with the most productive form of energy known to mankind, nuclear energy. And by the way, here's the ultimate irony on this. The very people who are most opposed to carbon emissions, and I favor more drilling and fracking and everything else, I'm all in for that. I've been an evangelist for it. But the people who are the biggest opponents of more fossil fuels also include some of the biggest opponents of nuclear energy, which tells you that that climate agenda actually has nothing to do with the climate and has everything to do with letting China catch up to the U.S. Global equity is what they call it. The problem with nuclear energy is not that it's not good enough at supplying our energy needs. It is that it might be too good.